Hello, everybody. I'm very happy and honored to be here today with this panel. We are together for 90 minutes. First, we will have Jonas Lund, who will make a presentation about his project, about his token and his DOA. And then I will introduce you the people with me on this stand, and we will discuss NFTs. To finish, maybe we will have some questions if you have. So I will now give the mic to Jonas. Jonas, do you hear us?
Yes.
So you can start.
Okay, great. Hi and welcome. Sad I couldn't be there in person, but I'm happy I can be there remotely as a little floating figure in the sky. It's a bit complicated at times to do these Zoom calls because there's complications in getting feedback. But in case there's something glitchy or buggy or whatever, just please just somehow reach out to me and then we can adjust it. So I'm just gonna start. I have prepared a presentation, which hopefully you can see right now. Perhaps we can. Yes, we can. Yeah. So I prepared a presentation. I will go through it. It's something like 100 slides. So it's a lot. So probably I'll go quite fast. And if it's too fast, maybe you can just let me know. And also if you don't hear so well. So I prepared a talk called Horse is a Camel Designed by Committee, which is a funny title that comes from, was coined around the time of like IBM's super corporate structure back in the 70s and 80s, where every decision was like a straight up, like every decision had to go through a committee. So, and then the suggestion is that a camel is a worse version of a horse. So then the committee, decision by committee, always leads to a worse outcome. We will see if this is the case or not throughout this presentation. But so essentially, the talk is about the Jonas Lund token, which is this work I made that started in 2018, which very briefly summarized is a tokenization of my artistic practice, where there's X amount of Jonas Lund tokens. Owning a Jonas Lund token in your cryptocurrency Ethereum wallet gives you voting rights on all strategic decisions concerning my artistic practice and life. So first, I'm just going to do a bit of background as to how we got there, and then we're going to look into more specifically how the JLT or Jonas Lund token works. So I start pretty much all of my presentations with this slide, which is a classic NetArt slide, which is showing 3 different types of networks, which is a centralized network, a decentralized network, and a distributed network. And I included to just make the point that all my work operates through and in different types of networks, whether this is like an online network or an art world network or a sort of system network. At the same time, I deal a lot with different types of power structures, which I often illustrate with this beautiful triangle or pyramid, that the higher up you are on the pyramid, the more agency and power you have over the system. Like these are somehow the rules and define the kind of structure of everything. And this is a slide I found online, which is a decision-making management tool. I'm very interested in how we reach certain decisions, if one can optimize decision-making processes, and how this creates like a foundation for our like democratic system, right? Like you have a sort of decision-making voting structure or not. Okay, so that's somehow the basic interests. Now we're going to look into more specific interests that's been following my career path for the last 10 years, which is the art world. So, and the art world is this. So when Warhol created his Brillo boxes and put them in a gallery, the art system needed a definition to be able to separate Warhol's Brillo boxes from the ones you can find in the supermarket. They were materialistically identical, but conceptually and monetarily completely different. The Brillo box in the gallery and the Brillo box in the supermarket, different, but identical. As a response to this, George Dickey, which is a philosopher, a thinker, observed the art world system and came to the conclusion that, and this is the definition of art, the institutional theory of art. A work of art in the classificatory sense is, number 1, an artifact, and number 2, on which some person or persons acting on behalf of a certain social institution, the art world, has conferred the status of candidate for appreciation. In other words, art is whatever the art world says is art. And that also means by extension that the art world system determines what is relevant, good art, and what is sort of irrelevant or worthless art. So the higher up you are in the art world power structure, like if we go back to the pyramid, the higher up you are to like this little top, the more influence and agency you have in determining what is like gets platformed, what gets included in the institutional shows, and what gets sort of ignored. Right? And for someone with my background is in like programming or like writing scripts and code to execute functions in a sort of hierarchical structure. If you come from this like position of trying to subvert certain existing structures in society, the art world network seems like a dream in a sense, because the value of an artwork is entirely subjective, but it's controlled, seemingly entirely subjective, but it's controlled by the top of the power hierarchy, like in the top of the pyramid. So if one can write scripts or make sort of works that addresses or engages with the top of the power hierarchy, you can somehow hedge or stake your artistic production to be valuable by default as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Keep that in mind for later as we will look into the Jonas Lund token project. This is just some background. I'm just going to show you a couple of different works before we get to it that just addresses certain aspects of what I've covered already. This is from 2013 called The Fear of Missing Out, in which I wrote an algorithm based on a very large art world database that I compiled. I wrote an algorithm that would output instructions for how to make successful works of art, looking into different types of value production, if there's a sort of objective formula that you can distill from big data to make successful works of art. In the same year, I made a piece called Gallery Analytics, which installed a Wi-Fi mesh network in the gallery and institution that tracked it tracked the Wi-Fi signal of everyone's smartphone without the visitor's consent, and gave detailed gallery analytics. It's like a remake of Google Analytics, which is used to track stats on websites, but for the gallery. So you get like a real-time map of where people are. Every blue dot is a visitor, the green dot is me, and the red dot is the curator. So you can see how many people enter your gallery, you can see how many people pass by the gallery and do not enter, you see what works are the most popular. Again, to try and optimize an exhibition experience. And repurposing technology that is most commonly used in shopping malls to convert customers from window displays to go inside to then convert it into the gallery space. In 2016, I made this sort of endless quiz binary opposition website called Fair Warning as a commission for Whitechapel Art Gallery in London, which continuously presents you with a very odd decision-making process. Like you have home, away, before internet, after internet, and it's all distributed and synchronized. So you see all the participants and it just keeps on going and going and going and going and going. A sort of never-ending questionnaire that you can't succeed in, essentially. In 2015, did this piece of 24 paintings in Steve Turner contemporary in Los Angeles, which were trying to renegotiate the power dynamic between artist, dealer, and collector. Most typically, the gallerist or dealer just sells to people at their discretion and gives very little agency and influence to who they sell to the artist, unless you are like really like top blue chip artist, then you can have more influence from this. Otherwise, the gallery just has like free reign, right? Which seems like a kind of dubious power dynamic to me. So I made a series of paintings where the terms of ownership, the terms of sales agreements are hand painted on the front of the canvas. So the gallerist, in this case, Steve Turner, has to follow the rules. So he may not for example, in this case, this painting may only be purchased by a collector who also agrees to purchase donation. And then to the right is the donation painting. This painting may only be purchased by a collector who will donate it to one of the following museums by March 21, 2020. Moderna, MoMA, Tate, Hamburger Bahnhof, LACMA, and the State Lake. So in this case, renegotiating the power dynamic, right? And then putting some extra labor on the dealer, in a sense. And through this, I could completely control who gets to own the work or who gets to buy it and what's the criteria to qualify to get one of the paintings. In it's going quite fast, but it's just some background. In 2017, I made a piece outside of Paris in the Gennevilliers Municipal Museum Gallery. The piece was called Critical Mass, which was an installation that was entirely constructed based on user input. So connected to it was a website called criticalmass.network, where you could level up your agency by participating and submitting proposals, and then vote proposals up and down. And then as soon as the proposal had reached a certain level, it got executed and then put into the exhibition. The little switches you see to the right and left are like on and off switches in the gallery. So you can turn on and off lights, you can turn on and off TVs, you can turn on and off fans, etc. And to the top, you see the user level. This user level is 100. So the more you participate, the more your proposals go through, the more influence and agency you get. This is as a way to respond to social media, which are promising this idea of we show you what you want to see, we give you what you want, we respond to your signals. It's an exhibition in permanent flux that just responds to all the users, giving them what they want when they want it, basically. In 2014, I did a piece called Studio Practice, which converted the whole gallery into a production facility, hiring 6 assistants full-time during the gallery opening hours, with the instructions to make process-based abstraction, zombie formalism paintings. As soon as a painting was deemed complete by one of the assistants, it was documented, uploaded to the website, and then appraised by an advisory board of 14 people. Based on their appraisals, I would decide whether the painting would be signed and become a work of art of Jonas Lund, or destroyed and become recycled. So again, it's like how do you create a whole infrastructure system where you have the production, the mediation, the distribution, and the appreciation all in one setup, right? Okay, so only 2 more works than Jonas Lund token. In 2014, did also with Steve Turner, before the strings attached, series of 40 paintings, all outfitted with GPS trackers on the back, trying to map out the flip collectors. That was really very like a big thing in the art market at the time, 2013, 14, 15, to map out the network of flip collectors in the world. So 40 paintings inspired by zombie formalism or the process-based abstraction, outfitted with GPS trackers, sold to some of the most notorious flip collectors in the US and UK and Europe, and then tracked, right? Like, so you see how they move, where they end up. The goal of this piece, I mean, it's really like shooting yourself in the foot for a successful market career, because you're selling to the worst collectors. So like, yeah, and that was 2014. So how to ruin one's market, shoot oneself in one's foot. The goal, of course, was to create it, to put it in so it becomes flipped, like, so it really enters into Phillips, Sotheby's, and Christie's markets. And some of the paintings ended up being auctioned, but there's some terms of ownership stamped on the back that made it quite prohibitive to sell them in auction, because it included a couple of paragraphs that needed to be included in the auction catalog, which some of the auction houses, such as Christie's, was not really into. So anyways, and then most recently, this piece called Most Valuable Painting, or MVP, that launched just a couple of weeks ago, here installed in W1 Curates in London on Oxford Street, which is a series of digital paintings that optimize themselves based on collector choice. So when a collector chooses a painting, it becomes like the direction of the network, and the remaining paintings evolve and continue and continue and continue. Okay, so that was some background. So we can see like that the topics discussed in the very beginning are somehow emerging in different types, shapes, and forms throughout my work. There's a lot of different aspects of value production. There's a lot of different aspects of decision making. There's some type of aspect of validation or legitimization. So you have a sensation that through the network you can validate the artwork and produce, like, to ensure, to legitimize its value, essentially. So when it comes to the Jonas Lund token, it's kind of taking aspects of all of these works and putting it into one project that's now been running for around 4.5 years. So we can start by checking the Jonas Lund token terms of ownership, which is a document that is slightly outdated because this project changes and evolves quite quickly, but it defines all the sort of important roles of it. So paragraph 1, Jonas Lund token is a 2018 work of art by Jonas Lund, hereinafter referred to as artist. JLT is a cryptocurrency based on the Ethereum ERC20 token standard, which is the fungible token, so not the non-fungible token. Fungible meaning that one Unasloon token is exactly the same as another Unasloon token, with a fixed amount of 100,000 tokens. The JLT Ethereum smart contract is this. Yeah. The rest of the paragraphs don't matter too much. I think, yeah, paragraph 15 is important. Each JLT grants owner the right to vote on all proposals concerning the artist's artistic practice as available on the Unasloon token website, as submitted by artist or JLT holder with more than or equal to 100 JLTs. Paragraph 16, owners do not spend their JLTs on the votes, but retain all tokens. Owner may submit proposals to the JLT holders and board of trustees if owner holds at least 100 Unasloon tokens. Essentially, that describes it. So over the last 4 years, it's taken many different shapes and forms, this project. Here it's like a booth at Art Düsseldorf in 2018, the Unasloon token available for sale. No physical artworks in the show. There's a funny story about this one, which I will explain very quickly. So the jury for picking the best booth in the art fair, they spent around 2 hours at this booth, hanging around, looking slightly confused, and came to the conclusion that we really want to give you the best booth at the fair, but we can't because there are no artworks in the booth, which it's funny. Here's a exhibition called On This Day, which took place in Decentraland, the König Gallery's Decentraland location. So it's a copy of their St. Agnes in Berlin. Here, like presented with a huge table for all the shareholders with some animals and different types of memories. Here's the Unasloon token booth at Spark Art Fair in Vienna, which looks kind of weird and flat. And here's like a Unasloon token cow installed in Seoul on one of the biggest LED screens in the world, I believe. And here's the cow at Times Square. And here's the same cow. And here's the same cow in Tokyo, in the Shibuya crossing. So let's look at some of these proposals because it's a bit elusive, let's say. Okay, so that's how it works, right? So the board members have influence and agency over decisions, but what kind of decisions are actually being made? And how many board members are there? So to answer that question, right now there's around 180 Unasloon token board members. All sort of with varying degrees of participation. As anyone who tried to make a community participatory artwork or any kind of community driven thing knows that incentivizing participation is complicated. The basic assumption for the Unasloon token is you reach the strategic decisions because the value of the token is tied to my performance as an artist. So the better my career does, the more valuable the token becomes, and then the more profit you can make as you sell it, or profit through dividends, which we'll look into later. So here are just a bunch of different proposals. There's like 34 at this point, and we're going to look at a couple ones. So we start with this one, which is the Kindle Show banner design, which is a good example of art production, like content production output, like decision reaching output for like what the work should look like. So this was for a show at Kindle Contemporary in Berlin, curated by Office Impart, a show called Behind the Screen. For the show, we needed to make 2 banners in 6 by 3 meters to install on a freestanding wall. So here are 4 different options in the proposal. Option number 1, clean and informative looking banners with a selection of representatives from the animal kingdom. Option 2, a continuation of the Unasloon token wallpapers in Düsseldorf, the fox from Linus Torvalds, the engineer of the Linux kernels, quote, be lazy as a fox. In other words, look for smarter solutions. Option number 3, binary divisions to signal what the JLT board is busy with, picking between left and right, the original JLT identity in a full display on top of a JLT branded pattern. And option number 4, on the one side, it's a spelling mistake. On the one side, the return of the bird from the pop sockets proposal with a clear message: invest in Unasloon and invest in you. We still don't really know what the bird wants or is looking for, or even what type of bird it is, but the bird seems to be a strong JLT supporter, defending the terms of ownership in the corner there. And on the other side, an advanced crypto 3D rendering JLT logo on a sky background, which is this one. So then people cast their votes with comments. Gal Packard with 500 Unasloon tokens says, mostly because he votes for option number 4, mostly because I like the brash advertising like CG logo. It tells us the most solid hole you can invest in. Thanks to its red-purple gradients, the bird looks like it's been lifted from a banknote with it, which is appropriate. I'm not a fan of the copy. Maybe it needs something like decentralized autonomous artistic practice from option 2. Option 1 would have been my second choice. And then we see on the top here that option 4 wins with 50% of the vote. So that is determined. This is the truth that becomes the reality. So then the banners are produced, and here is option number 4. Invest in Jonas Lund, the bird, and the terms of ownership, and the CGI 3D token logo. So that's a very simple example of from proposal with options to decision to execution to finished, right? The basic idea now, if we go back to this idea of the pyramid structure, like the hierarchical distribution of power in the art world system, and how the objective / subjective value production occurs and takes place. If my board of the Jonas Lund token is part of this art world network, and they have a lot of agency and influence, and most of the board members are either artists, collectors, curators, or gallerists. Right? So they are the sort of representatives of the art world, and they are the participants. They make the decisions happen. And because they are the participants and high up in the power hierarchy, it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they say this is the best choice, it's automatically the best choice. It's a sort of hedged, right? So it's like a hedged value production. It cannot go wrong. It doesn't matter what they choose. Just by the fact that they choose it means that it's the correct decision. There's also a Jonas Lund token bounty program, which was very common among the cryptocurrency ICO hype in 2017, which was the initial coin offering scammy times on the Ethereum network, which essentially means that you receive Jonas Lund tokens by doing any of the following. This is really like making the Jonas Lund tokens liquid as a currency. You get paid with Jonas Lund tokens for doing favors or doing good things for the Jonas Lund artistic brand, artistic practice. Like Art Forum critics pick of a Jonas Lund exhibition include a work by Jonas Lund in a group show in an institution, host a Jonas Lund solo exhibition at a gallery, invite Jonas Lund to teach, write a letter of recommendation, invite Jonas Lund to give a talk, which is happening right now, which one can claim tokens for. Write a text on Jonas Lund's work, invite Jonas Lund for dinner with a royalty, place a work by Jonas Lund in an institutional museum collection. And then you get a log of all the different bounties delivered, which one can check on the website, jlt.ltd, which is quite a funny kind of thing, because it also means that for every exhibition that happens, for every talk, for every article, it's somehow the board grows. And it gets like everybody who works gets sort of included into the participation. I think in hindsight, I'm not very pleased with the visuals. I think also in the correct moment for the JLT board, the visuals should have also been a vote, but there was so much stress and hype and FOMO and stuff, so it had to happen sooner rather than later. This was one of the first Jonas Lund token NFTs. Then how it works is the NFTs is more like a receipt or a relic of an evidence of a transaction that's happened rather than like the value, because the tokens are at the time of purchase disconnected from the NFT. But you may only technically resell the NFT if you also attach the Jonas Lund tokens to the piece. Nevertheless, in the later, this was like same year, but months later, it developed a bit further. And then the idea of the Jonas Lund token NFTs was to include a profit sharing scheme. So you would distribute the profits from any NFT sale based on how many tokens you hold. So if you hold 1,000 Jonas Lund tokens, you will get 1% of all the profits. 1,000 tokens out of 100,000 means 1%. So you get 1% of the profits, which was totally the plan until I had a chat with like an unnamed CEO of an unnamed cryptocurrency marketplace, where he told me that in order to do such things, you need a banking license. Otherwise, you cannot pay out dividends. So I had to take it back to the drawing board. a little bit, but it's still in the making, as we will see in the current ongoing proposal. That's also how the NFT, Jonas Lund token NFTs developed, is that we got this for the show at König Gallery, introduced these Jonas Lund token animals, all representing different core values of the Jonas Lund token universe, all sold as unique NFTs, which came with X amount of Jonas Lund tokens. And then you also get the animal as a playable character in a forthcoming game. And then it just keeps on going and going. So many different aspects, right? Let me see, there are we okay on time, or should I try and wrap up?
As you wish. I think it would be good to follow on to the main subject.
Yeah, for sure. I just have 2 more things to show, and then that's fine. Well, I'll just quickly go through this one. This was a work, again, a proposal number 32 on production, which is like voting between abstraction and memories, essentially turning into this. I mean, this is kind of like straightforward, and then you end up with this installation where the pieces are installed. This is at the art at Linz, in the Corollium, which was the first institutional show on NFTs called Proof of Art, I believe. And then like it looks like this. Just wrapping up and say that it's an ongoing project. It's a sort of performative. It was described as performance art capitalism in the New Yorker, which I think somehow makes a little bit of sense, at least, that it's a corporate structure that explores different layers of decision-making, optimization, value production, powered by like the ERC20 token, which is, we can talk more detailed about that in the panel, but essentially trying to explore all different new models for reaching consensus building and distributing the value production and the production in itself. Like my dream long-term for the Jonas Lund token is that it becomes entirely autonomous, like it runs by itself, that all the board members can participate in such a degree that I can just take a step back. It can be rebranded from my Jonas Lund token to something else, because it's a decentralized autonomous practice, except it's hyper-centralized because I'm in the center. So that's both the strength and the weakness of the work, I would say. But in principle, I think that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. So I will now move to introducing the people on the stage with me. So we have Annemien Witkam. She's a lawyer, junior associate at STIB in Amsterdam. I think it's very interesting to have a lawyer with us because I believe, hopefully in the discussion, you will see that the legal aspect of NFTs is very important, maybe even more important than in the traditional art market. We have Adriano Piccinatti di Torcello. Adriano is a director at Deloitte in Luxembourg, and more than 10 years ago now, 12 years ago? 15 years ago, sorry, I know. 15 years ago, he started the Art and Finance Report, which is now a reference, and so it's going to be interesting to see his take on this kind of new thing, which is NFTs. And we have Rai David Bradley, who is an artist. It's always very difficult to introduce an artist, so maybe, Rai, would you introduce in a few words your work and yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm a digital painter, so I've been making digital paintings for maybe 15 years. But prior to the NFT marketplace, so I always had to find a way to embody them in something physical. So it was printing to velvet or to glass or to steel, or now I make tapestry in Japan. But as of 2 years ago, I was finally able to use the actual file itself as the medium, which was always the intention. And then there became a marketplace for the actual file. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And to finish, I'm Olivier Marian. I'm a co-founder of Arteia. We make digital solutions for the art market. So our subject today, NFTs and the creator economy. What does it mean for collectors, investors? I would say, yeah, investors, maybe, why not? And the rest of us, and of course, artists. So we will try to take on subjects that we could discuss, like intellectual property challenges. What are the new challenges that are brought by the NFTs about this intellectual property? what is exactly an NFT? So I don't know if in the audience you know all about NFTs. I know that in this series of conferences, this subject has been tackled already, but of course we'll be able to answer your questions at the end if you have to. The new challenges, yeah, so sorry. So an NFT, what is an NFT? Is it a proof of ownership? Is it a proof of authenticity? Is it an artwork by itself for some people? The new challenges for the creators, and for collectors. If you buy a painting, well, you know that you have to take it home and take care of it. If you buy an NFT, how do you store the NFTs? It's not so easy for a lot of people. It's quite a dangerous stuff. And what are the new opportunities? Because let's not talk only about the bad things, but of course about the good things also. What are the opportunities about this? So maybe I can start with Rai. I saw an interview of you 5 years ago, and it was funny because it was you were saying it's not interesting asking the question of is internet part of the practice of art, because it just is. It is definitely here. And do you have a similar feeling about NFTs now, and how do you work with NFTs today?
Yeah, so I mean, I was part of a thing called the post-internet art generation. It was from maybe 5 or 10 years ago. We were using the internet as a medium. Now it's prevalent to the point that that's not even important anymore. So I definitely still think that. But I did a show 1 year ago in New York, in March last year at the Whole Gallery in New York. And at that time I presented tapestries of the exact same image of a paint. Like the file is where I make the painting, then it gets woven as a tapestry in Japan and then gets hung on the wall in the gallery in New York. But at the same time, I had the same file available on Super Rare on the NFT marketplace at exactly precisely the same time. And so it was up to the collector of traditional art of tapestry to buy the work on the wall in New York. And the NFT collectors could buy the same work, but they were buying the file itself. The unusual thing that happened, it was like an experiment. I wanted to see what would happen. The price of the tapestry was $15,000 US, but then very quickly someone from the crypto collecting world paid $30,000 just for the file, didn't even want the tapestry at all, and was happy with just the image itself. I guess to prove a point, but towards the end of the show, like Pablo Fraile, who's a very prominent NFT collector, decided that he actually wanted to buy both, so he bought the NFT and the tapestry and then owned both things simultaneously. But there was no way for me to really tie them together. I could make an agreement and say, I hope you keep them together, but there's no real way to enforce that. What I do now is if I sell a painting now, this is a year later, I sell the tapestry and the NFT gets transferred to the collector as a part of the same acquisition so that they're no longer separated, but I cannot enforce them to stay together.
Actually, we have to talk because we do have a solution with NFC chips that we put on physical artwork to try to connect to the digital
fantastic.
So. But the interesting part, what was? Did you have a contract about defining exactly what was bought with the NFT? When you say you try to link the digital file and the physical one, was there some kind of a contract written somewhere or in the metadata of the NFT? Or?
Not necessarily, no, because at that point it was initially 1 year ago. It was February 2021. It was all very new. It was the first time an NFT had been in a gallery in this way in New York, and so we didn't have a contract per se. But Super Rare has its own terms and conditions, which means that there's 10% on resale to the artist, and with the gallery, we just kind of split the proceeds together. But there was, on the collector's side, one of the NFTs was bought, sold, and rebought within 10 minutes of the show opening. So it had already changed hands within 10 minutes.
It's one of the big challenges when you're trying to make NFTs linked to physical artworks. It's the what we call the secondary market. So first market, primary market is the gallery or the artist selling to the first collector, and then this is kind of obvious, no problem. You go to the gallery, you show that you have the NFT, and you get the physical artwork. The problem comes when you reach the secondary market. So when somebody sells again the NFT, actually you don't know who is the seller, you don't know who is the buyer, you only have wallet numbers, so they are not able to communicate, so they would have to go through the gallery, and you have to trust the first collector that he will send indeed the physical artwork in a good shape, in a good way, the real one. So it's interesting. And I mean, do you have already artists or collectors maybe coming to request some kind of contract of precising what am I buying when I buy an NFT, or how should I describe what I sell when I am an artist and I sell an NFT? What is indeed sold with the NFT?
I personally haven't worked with a client that has made an NFT, but I know a colleague of mine has. But I did do some research on the topic, and I wrote an article about it. But in that research, I actually found out it really depends on the smart contract that governs the NFT, what you get. Because, like simply said, you have a certificate with the file location, but that file location can either be a hyperlink, or it can be like a JPEG file or whatever. But if it's a hyperlink that is somewhere on a server, and if the server dies, then the file location is also dead. So that's like, as a lawyer, you're always skeptical about those topics, but.
Yeah, it looks like there are a lot of things that are not yet solved. When you look at the NFT market, there's been some kind of craziness. There's a lot of money, and so it started quite fast, actually, at least in the last 18 months. It went very crazy, and you have a lot of money involved. And often when you talk to artists, but also to collectors, and you tell them, okay, but do you know exactly what you get? Where is the artwork? So the NFT arguably is the proof of ownership of something. Okay, so the non-fungible token is something that you have on your wallet, so you can prove that you own this NFT. And then in the metadata, what we call the metadata, so it's the description of what you own in the NFT, there is sometimes a link to an artwork on a Google server or something, whatever. And it's not really clear. In fact, people don't really know. And then there is all the IP problems, so the intellectual property. Adriano, you have incredible experience about the traditional artwork. Do you see a lot of people in this traditional artwork interested or surprised, or they criticize a lot this NFT market? Is it something that is well taken or suspicious for them?
Thank you, Olivier. And so by introduction, so I've also have to say that I'm a kind of on a learning curve on NFT too. So I'm very modest in terms of my knowledge. It's true that I've been kind of looking at the transformation of the art world for a certain numbers of years, and of course, NFT is definitely on our watch list. So obviously, this is something that, of course, we have tracked in our last Art and Finance report. Definitely, we see this. In every discussions everywhere, so it's amazing how many discussions are taking place on that. And just to be very also to tell you where we stand on the Deloitte side in Luxembourg. So next month, next month. Basically, we start that next week. So we have the Metaverse month in Luxembourg, and we will talk about, of course, Metaverse, NFTs, and we will have one panel on NFTs. So where I'm also going to learn a lot. So in fact, so. To answer quickly to your question, so 2 points. So definitely we see more interest, more questions around that, and many open questions coming from security, coming from climate impact, coming from legal, coming from tax, and so on and so forth. And I'm not able to provide an answer on all of them, but definitely there is much more kind of, there's a growing interest for the subject, on the use, on the purpose, on what are the potential benefits. And me, if I have to say my personal take on that, is that yeah, when we talk about NFT, first of all, it's not limited to the art world. So we are talking about digital file. So, and of course, applications are enormous. And this is why, so we strongly believe that NFT, this is something that is going to stay. First of all, this is something that is going to grow. Of course, it will go through a certain numbers of hiccups. But recently in our TMT report on the Deloitte side, we had a chapter on NFTs and the sport industry, for example. And there also you have plenty of applications. So again, this is why so we strongly believe that NFT is something that is going to develop. On top of that, so we talk about ownership, but something that we also look where I see a great interest is about how can you use NFT to finance art and creation, so which I think is also very interesting. And I would say the new generation is the one that today so is living through web, through internet. We are going through this massive transformations on the website, on the web. So you have all heard about Web 3.0, the ownership economy, NFT, DeFi, metaverse. This is part of the discussions. Definitely, we believe this is the beginning of it. This is going to grow, and one of the two questions that we are going to ask, so on the 11, when we have the NFT panel, so should we get in now or should we wait? And my take on that, so is really, so we should go now on it, because this is kind of a moving thing. It's evolving so quickly that if we would like to kind of, I will not even say try to catch up, because I think so when I talk to younger generations, so the one that have been in that world for certain numbers of years, the experience is absolutely fantastic. I'm a kind of a dinosaur in that field. I try to catch up, not easy, but the potential is incredible. This is going to develop for any kind of creative sectors, movie, fashion, so art for sure, and others. So yeah, so I do see a growing interest, and I would really recommend people to fasten their seatbelts, because this is just going to be quite an interesting adventure, because there are still a lot of things to be sorted out, and legal is one of them. And great that you are there. Plenty of questions for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Jonas, it was interesting in your. Do you hear me? Just to check. Yeah, great.
Yes.
During your presentation, we saw the terms of use of your token. Did you define already? Also, did you take the time and legal advice to think about the definition of what is your NFT when you sell an NFT, and what is the intellectual property that is transferred or not? Did you try to create something specific about this interesting opportunity?
Yes, I mean, the reality is like, which only recently understood from a more in-depth conversation with a bunch of different corporate lawyers, that when you sell a traditional painting, like as I've done many times in the past, it's like the IP of the painting belongs to me, unless it's in the sales contract that I transfer the IP rights to the collector, which I have in none of the sales contracts of all the paintings I've sold. So all the IP of the paintings belong to me. It's the same with NFTs. Unless there is a contract, an actual legal contract in the transaction of an NFT, the IP belongs with the artist, which is pretty interesting because most people don't realize this. And I think in the case of it's important to also state, and also this was the conclusion from, as of now, the Ethereum smart contract, like the Ethereum blockchain, the most typically used for all NFTs, the smart contracts has no legal bearing, right? There is no enforceable agreement in the smart contract that determines what has happened, right? So all of the sort of rules, let's say, in the NFT space so far is based on convention. It's like, okay, so we attribute value to this because of the convention, but there is nothing technical or legal beyond the agreement in the network that stops artists from minting the same piece over and over and over again. There's no legal restriction on that. Similar to what Wade Guyton did back in the day when he tried to destroy his own market to counter some speculation, right? But I will show you just for fun. I'll show you because it applies to this, because I made a series of NFTs in relation to this. Let me just show you this, which is called Smart Burn Contract, which is NFTs which determines what, when you purchase it, you enter into agreement with the artist in this case me, for doing certain things. And if you fail to do it, the NFT will be destroyed. So in this case, the owner of this NFT must donate 5% of their yearly profits to a charitable cause once a year in perpetuity. And if they fail to prove this to me by filling in this proof form, I can remotely destroy the NFT, even if I don't own it anymore. So then this is like really taking that sort of conventional, like, let's say, agreement to the next level, right? So in this case, like, the owner of this NFT must do an act of kindness once a week for a year. And if you fail to do it, the NFT ceases to exist. There are certain aspects of that. For sure, there are now a couple of different court cases in the US that will try and define and make precedents for what's actually the consequence of a smart contract or not. And then there are a lot of materiality for sort of conceptual exploration within that space. But I think in any ways, the conclusion is that the IP, unless agreed upon in a sales contract in the traditional way, like in the court of law, where both parties sign something over, or if you make a disclaimer or like a release form, the IP belongs with the artists. Like, yeah.
I think the collector has right to display, and that can be a really loose term. What does that actually mean? Because you don't have commercial reproduction rights, but right to display the work that you have bought can mean you can print it and have it in your own house. And at what scale can you do that? There's no, I mean, the right to display is a very loose legal term.
I think, Jonas, you're right in trying to make the analogy with the traditional world. When you buy a painting, if you buy a painting of Picasso, good for you. It's you own only this painting. You don't own any right. That means that you are not able, for example, to print T-shirts and sell T-shirts with this image of this painting that you own. A lot of collectors ignore this. They think that when they buy an artwork, they buy everything with it, but the intellectual property of the creation of this image or this painting still belongs to the artist, at least for 70 years after the death of the artist. So, so this is basically, there are laws for this. So there are no there's no agreement that you sign when you go into a gallery and you buy a painting, but there is the law, and so you just have to comply with the law. But many people don't know this law, and yeah, it's very interesting to see why for digital art some people think it's very different. Actually, if you define that it's art, you get into the law of art. And afterwards, there are some things about collectibles. So if we talk about CryptoPunks, for example, there's always an argument about what is art or what is not art. But typically, I believe CryptoPunks, it was made by tech guys. They don't pretend to be artists. So it's more collectible stuff. So you want to speculate on the value of this collectible. So are you bound to the laws of art with this? I don't know exactly what would be the definition of what is an artwork. Is it limited number edition? Maybe there's something about the edition number. Do you know about this?
Sorry,
What is when I create an artwork? If I create 10,000 editions of this image, is it an artwork? Can I pretend it's an artwork, or is it just an image that I create as a design? Is there intellectual property? Are there any limits on how to define this?
I think Lava Labs, who's the team that made CryptoPunks, I think they, because there was many offshoot punk projects, there was millions of them with exactly the same look. And Lava Labs pursued a few of those people legally to stop them. There was cease and desist orders, quite a few of them that Lava Labs put out to emulators that had come out. So I think in that sense, like, they were enforcing their legal rights about their ownership of the 10,000 original CryptoPunks. Yeah,
there are crazy histories. There's an artist that created some editions of an image based on a handbag from a luxury brand that I will not say the name, but and some other creators copied this and tried to make the same very similar artworks as the first artist. So he tried to sue those secondary artists, and at some point he received a letter from the creator of the bag at the origin, which was a big luxury brand, that said, okay, I'm sorry, but this is something that we have proper, intellectual property upon. So it's really a nightmare. It's a complicated thing, which is more visible than the traditional artwork because the money is big and it's digital, so everybody sees it very much. So as soon as you create something, you are on display and it's easier to see what's going on.
Yeah, I think like what the solution to this will be eventually AI tools will be strong enough to mean that you won't be able to like for example YouTube, like if you try to upload copyright content to YouTube, YouTube has algorithms that kind of can identify it and take it down like very quickly. So it's actually hard to put copyright material on YouTube now. There'll be a point in the future where I think if you don't actually own something and have like proof of ownership of that thing, you won't be able to publish it. Like the platform just won't accept it. And so AI needs to get a bit better to recognize things, but eventually we won't need to enforce it, I think. Like AI will know if you own it or not, and then therefore will be more easy to enforce. Yeah.
Questions for both artists, Ryan and Jonas. As you are now creating more and more digital artworks, NFTs, besides your physical artworks, how do you manage this? Do you have like a computer guy in your studio or with you helping you to manage the wallets? Is there a big challenge on this?
Jonas?
Hi, yeah, I mean, I've worked like online for the last, let's say, 12 years or something. So I think for me, it's nothing new at all. Like all the works I showed in my presentation in the beginning are all networked in one way or another. Even like paintings with GPS trackers have a website connected to them and then they work in networks and stuff. And that's not to say that it's not like a increase in the demand. And I would say a lot of my friends in the same space of like older net art generation that have done many presentations at iMAL like 10 years ago, etc. Many of them feel a very strong sense of fear of missing out and stress because it's such a hype mechanism that just pushes. So in the sense of that, I would say I'm like really happy or like blessed, let's say, to have the capability of doing this by myself. Like I can write my own smart contracts and then release them and things like that, which gives more option for just making things, like to engage in the networks properly, like to have a full grasp on the technology, the consequences of it, the impact on both art market, art world, art system, society at large, etc. And that's not to say I'm doing everything by myself, because I also have a lot of help, because it's more fun to work with people. Otherwise, being an artist is the most loneliest profession there is, I would say, because you're just alone in the studio all day long, which totally it's not really conducive. Yeah.
Sorry, Jonas. I love Super Rare. I tend to use Super Rare, the platform, exclusively to confer the NFTs between, and the way that the blockchain works is it does a lot of the organization for me. So it's very categorical about who bought the work, where did the work go, and the back end behind the tools that they have, like the user interface for a creator. There's a lot of metrics there that you can see. There's a lot of metric feedback. So I find if I just use like Super Rare platform, it's very easy for me to manage everything. If I used like OpenSea and Super Rare and Foundation and many platforms, there's not really one way of aggregating all of them into one database to track. So I tend to just stay in one ecosystem for that reason.
And Jonas was saying that he was writing himself his smart contract, which is, from the discussion we have with artists, it's a big subject because, for example, OpenSea, we saw that they are trying to open the system to more people. So actually, with what they call the lazy minting, they are trying to so how to explain this without being too technical, but the idea is when you create an NFT on a platform like OpenSea, which is the eBay of NFTs, the biggest platform today, maybe, you pay a fee. Sorry?
90%.
90%.
You're gaining market share, apparently.
on Ethereum. So actually, you pay something. You pay because you're gonna use the blockchain, and you pay what we call gas fees, and it can be quite expensive. Can be from $50 to several $100 just to create the artwork, which is not possible for a lot of young artists or beginning artists. To open this, OpenSea has created something what they call lazy minting, which in fact is not using the blockchain. So you create your NFT, but it's just on the OpenSea server so far, and after you sold it, then some information is stored on the blockchain, which gives the real value of the NFT. So my question at the beginning was, typically this is trying to make it easier for a lot of people, but actually it goes far from the idea of the blockchain and the NFT, which is very secure on-chain, on the blockchain. So a lot of artists are thinking about, okay, I'm not very happy with this, and I'm going to try to make my own smart contract to control how the metadata, so how the description of how the image, for example, or the movie, a small movie that is the artwork, is stored. It's not typically on-chain because it's too complicated, but how is it stored on the internet? How is it linked to the NFT? So there are a lot of discussions of this. So Jonas, you were saying that you mastered now this thing of creating your own smart contracts. Right? Do you have this concern, or are you happy with Super Rare so far?
I think there's issues that need to be ironed out for sure. I mean, like Super Rare is a private company. If they go out of business in 10 years, what happens to all the files? Like, where are the servers? Like, it's hard to build digital trust. I think we need to get to a place, we're not there yet, where we have like a universal layer across all assets in the world, like real estate, houses, fashion, all of it. And there's some sort of like, some sort of language that allows all assets to go through it and be verified through that one verification process, because right now it just feels like a lot of walled gardens, a lot of small ecosystems that don't interrelate. So for example, like if someone buys one of my NFTs on Super Rare and then sells it on OpenSea, the 10% royalty that's supposed to come to the artist is no longer there anymore. So there needs to be some sort of like unilateral agreement between all of it, which doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, there needs a standardization between those platforms, and even more. So we are talking mainly on platforms on Ethereum, but there are a lot of other blockchains. Tezos is a very nice blockchain because it's supposed to be much more eco-friendly. So it uses much less electricity and power so the cost of running the blockchain is much lower than Ethereum. So a lot of artists are very happy to be on this blockchain, but there are less collectors on this. But anyway, there are many platforms, and the problem for the artist and for the collector is that if you buy an NFT on one platform, sometimes you will not be able to sell it or to show it, even to display it on another platform. And so, of course, this is not the case in the traditional artwork. You just go somewhere, you show your painting, and it's okay. So there are so many problems. So I was citing your interview 5 years ago about internet, and it's often Adriano, you were saying some people say, should I go or not on this subject? We are in the 98, 99 of internet with NFTs. And the other big thing that is coming is not really the subject today, but what we call the metaverse and all this digital reality alternatives, or augmented reality, where you will be able to see artworks in different places, in virtual houses, in video games, or in virtual museums, or so. So it's an incredible subject also. I don't know how many time we have, and should we try to move on some questions, or
I have one question, if I may, just for my learning curve, because of course it's not a very, I would say, arty questions, but as we have, the purpose is also to talk about collectors and investors. We talk about IP, intellectual property, but what about taxes? So, and of course, so the token is not the artwork, so at least to my understanding. So when you, Jonas, or you, Ray, so when you sell, so what kind of taxes do you apply? So in Europe is VAT, in the US, so you have a sales tax. So can you tell me a little bit? So just, I don't know if this is of relevance to you, but I think taxes is everywhere, and if NFT is not subject yet to taxes, they will be soon, I guess.
They are, and all the platforms provide tax tools inside of them. So if, the US platforms have a US tax calculator, and then they're trying to build out functionality for that to apply in Europe as well. But right now, it's kind of very US centric. But what I do right now is like I've actually been just selling the tapestry and the NFT together as a one fiat currency payment, and so the VAT's in the same transaction, and I actually just transfer the NFT to the collector without the auction process, without even crypto, just by using the blockchain to transfer the ownership of the file to the collector. Then they receive the tapestry and they just pay one price with VAT on top. That seems to be the easiest way for now, because the functionality isn't there to get that complicated with it yet, but I think it's coming. Yeah.
Jonas?
Taxes, yeah, good. It's a good question. I think unless you are incorporate, it depends where you pay taxes, right? So if like where all the crypto kids are moving right now is to Portugal because there's no tax on crypto. It's just counted as a currency. So then in that sense, you would only pay like income tax, I guess, on the profits you make by selling NFTs. I'm paying taxes in the Netherlands, so it's the same. Like you pay income tax on your profits. If it's a result of a transaction of an NFT, if it's cryptocurrency you hold, you pay capital gains tax when you realize the profits, basically. So, and I think in that case, I know a couple of different unnamed NFT platforms that made a lot of profit last year. Their main expenditure of their profit is to lobby Congress in the US for good crypto rules, basically, like crypto laws that favor creators, let's say. So I would say, yeah, it's for sure something. I know my friends in Germany, they are all like this. Like they don't want to participate in the most complicated tax law in the world. So it will be many court cases where the rules will be determined and some people may suffer or not. I think in principle, of course, if you make profits through crypto, like whatever, it shouldn't be any different from making any like normal sales through like fiat currency. It's the same, like you pay taxes on it. It's like, that's totally good. I know some other friends, a funny curiosity anecdote, that made a lot of NFT sales last year, who spent 4 months writing custom software to do the German taxes with it. So like 4 months of last year was dedicated to just writing one piece of software that would analyze the whole transaction history to be able to file the taxes accurately. So hopefully that will improve over the years, but who knows?
Yeah, and the rules are moving. They are just starting to create the rules because it's a new stuff. So a lot of governments in France and Belgium and I don't know the other countries, but they are still thinking about how will we manage this. It's most of the time they don't really understand it. They don't really understand the transparency, but also all the possible transaction that occur around NFTs. So it's a complicated thing because if we go to lawyer, actually the lawyer usually they try to look at the laws, and now the laws are not really yet defined for this specific stuff. So it's quite a challenge, I guess, if you have questions about this. Would you have any question? Yes, please.
So maybe a bit of a provocative question for Annemijn. Well, we heard a lot of kind of about smart contracts, and just now saying like if you move marketplace, then the 10% secondary sales thing is not working anymore. Do smart contracts mean anything? And if so, what are they good at and what are they not good at in a law sense?
Good question. It's a tough one. I mean, like Jonas said, for example, if you want to transfer IP, there's according to Dutch law, you have the criterion that you have to have a written contract, so that can't be in a smart contract. So, for example, like IP, you can't transfer IP through a smart contract, but you can arrange certain things through a smart contract. I can't really say the exact things you can and you cannot, or you cannot. But for certain transactions for which the criterion is a written contract, you can't use a smart contract. Yeah.
Right, I guess I saw your tapestry yesterday, and I see the combination. You can sell only the tapestry or a combination or only the NFT. But let's go to basics. You did print the tapestry, and at the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, you issued the NFT, okay? Now, if they are sold separate, because at the time you were owning these two items, one is a piece of art. Would you say your NFT on your tapestry is a piece of art or not?
If the NFT is a piece of art?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the problem I set up was that's up to the collector. And so the same collector in New York, the first piece that sold, it was to a big collector in New York who buys traditional paintings. And I made her aware that there's also the file of this. It's available on Super Rare. Are you okay with that? And she said, that's fine. I only want the tapestry. And the NFT collector, who was like a crypto kind of guy, he's like, I don't want the tapestry. I just want the file. And so, and now they have the same thing, and they're both happy with the outcome. That was very early in the story, though, and I guess like ultimately at the end of the day, like what is the original? If you think about what is originality, what really is it? It tends to be what lasts the longest. So in 500 years from now, which one will be accessible? Because whichever one is then still there becomes the original one. If tapestry lasts longer, then it wins.
Will be there in 500 years, you
yeah,
said
it's
yesterday.
robust enough to last that long.
We are, okay, we pinpoint on the question. Let's assume, maybe it's theoretical, that you still own the piece, you've sold the NFT, and then, of course, one day you're going to sell the piece. So, for instance, either through smart contract or through the general law about art, IP, blah, blah, for instance, would the fact that you have sold the NFT could reduce the value of your piece?
Yeah, I think so. Now I encourage collectors to buy both. If you want to own the full asset, own the work and the NFT, and keep them together.
But what makes you say that it will reduce the value of your original piece? Like if you find a buyer for the tapestry, we'll say, okay, but it's not 50,000 because there is an NFT, so it's only 35. I don't know. So what makes you say that? Just a feeling or any facts?
Yeah, it was one show. It was a year ago. It was one of the first shows. There was only 8 works. So at the end of the day, there's only 8 pieces out there with this story around them. And they'll become important historically because that was that time. But now I want the assets to stay connected to each other. Because ultimately NFTs is like a automatic provenance chain of ownership. And we need that for everything, ultimately. And so, yeah.
Realize that the people are after NFT, not like after the new market is NFTs, it's not original piece.
No, it's
people,
both.
In fact, Annelise, we met a few weeks ago, and she said, from her generation, she said, but what makes you think that the image, the reproduction of the piece would not be more valuable than your original piece? You said that, you
maybe
remember?
The question is, are you talking about the artistic value or the financial value? If you talk, this example, I always try to go back to the traditional artwork, and we talk about digital files, but in fact it's been digital for a while. Let's say Bill Viola, it's a big artist making movies. Okay, when you buy a Bill Viola, you receive a file on a DVD that you display on the screen. Okay, if you try to sell it, you cannot go to Christie's just with the DVD. You have to go with a proof of ownership. And in fact, the proof of ownership will be probably the invoice from the gallery. So in fact, at some point, you could say that the invoice has a bigger financial value than the artwork, which is the file on the DVD. But so it depends what you are looking for. If you're talking about what I call the artistic value, it's the tapestry or the digital, whatever you prefer as a collector or as when you are looking at art. And if you talk about financial value, typically if you try to sell it to a crypto buyer, he will prefer the NFT, and if you try to sell it to a traditional collector, he will prefer the tapestry. There was this incredible project from Damien Hirst, who created 10,000 drawings, and after the sale, he asked the collectors to decide whether they keep the paper or whether they keep the NFT, and they have to destroy the other one, which is exactly the discussion we're having now. Very interesting work from Damien.
By the way, that's about to expire very soon, and a lot of people are writing to me saying, what should I do? Should I keep the NFT, or should I exchange it for the work on paper?
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do.
And it's exactly this problem, yeah.
Maybe this will be also an answer to your question. The ability to create bridge between the physical and the virtual in a reliable way is something that we try until now with failures. And Olivier, this is a question for you, because you develop a technology related to chips, NFC chips, that you developed maybe with an IP on it, and you are able now to create a reliable bridge between the physical and the virtual. And this is something amazing for you, the artists.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we are discussing. My background is my family are big collectors. So I've been more in the traditional art world for a while, but I'm also a computer engineer, so I'm technical. And we try to bridge to make the bridge between the physical and the digital. So we put NFC chips, secure NFC chips, on an artwork, so we can put it on the back of a painting, or we can put it on the tapestry.
Is it a QR code, or is
no?
it?
It's an NFC chip. NFC chip is what you got in your credit cards to make a contactless payment, for example. So it's like a sticker. It's very, very thin, very small. It's supposed to last very long, and this is very encrypted, and you cannot remove it without breaking it. And so when you scan it with your phone, you get to the certificate of ownership, authenticity. Sorry, so you get to a digital certificate of ownership, authenticity. So to make again the analogy, when you buy a painting, you get out of the gallery with a painting, a certificate of authenticity, which is normally a paper, and the invoice. Here, if we put an NFC chip on your painting, you will get a digital certificate of ownership, which is secured on the blockchain, so you are sure it will not be modified. It's not it is tamper-proof. You cannot modify it, and it's, for the first time, it's really linked to the artwork, because most of the time, the paper certificate, you can just change the artwork. You make a fake one, you give the real certificate of ownership, and it's gone. So yeah, we're working on this. Any other question? Sure.
Does that work? Yeah. Okay. So we are on the side of the collector's point of view, who owns the physical piece, okay, of art. So, okay, it just prevents somebody making, I don't know, in Hong Kong, a copy of your favorite painting, whatever, and a false certificate, and selling it, as we have seen so many sales of faux on the market. But back to the new world, what does this chip only allow you to make sure that there will not be two your Matisse copied somewhere and sold? Is this the only purpose, or is there any link with the new reality of NFT? Like if you own a piece, let's assume the artist, to simplify, has been dead for over 70 years, you could very well make of your Flemish painting or whatever an NFT.
Absolutely. Absolutely, but the Joconde, which is in the Louvre, arguably has more value than any print or copy that you can get in the museum shop. So still the original has more value. And how do you know that it's the original? You try to authentify it. Mm-hmm. And here, the idea of this chip that we are doing is most of the time, it started, the NFTs, they started as proof of ownership of a digital artwork. And now we are trying to allow NFTs to be able to be proof of ownership of a physical artwork through this chip that makes the link between the physical and the digital realm.
I get very far away from the art piece market, whatever.
Yeah, you're exactly
So
inside
two
it.
separate
Exactly inside
worlds.
it. We are trying to get all these crypto collectors that are maybe spending a lot of money onto CryptoPunks, or good for them. But maybe what we try to say is that it's good to try to go and understand that there is art history, that there are artists that have been creating for a long time, and even young artists that are creating paintings or sculptures or physical items. And maybe this is also interesting to try to use the crypto for the opportunities of the NFT, even for physical artworks. So this is what we're doing.
I have an artist for you. Not Olivier David and Bradley and Jonas Lund. How do you manage to create value in virtual with the ability like to produce in like any amount that you want? How do you create? What is your conception of rarity with the NFT that you are creating?
This is for the artist.
I mean, it's a really philosophical question, and at the end of the day, I don't know the answer to it because it's subjective. Some people think that the file is the original thing. If it starts as a file, that's the original, and any version that comes after that is just a reproduction. But then the file itself, if you look at like how data storage works, it's like magnetic storage or flash memory or in a server farm. If you really look at how that actually functions, we don't know, we don't have enough digital history to know how long that can actually last for. Whereas we know that bronze lasts for a long time, we know marble lasts for a long time, we know what we can trust, but we have no digital trust yet. So even if I did say I think the file is the original, I don't know about the file storage methods to preserve that originality and for how long will that last. Like the entire internet is backed up on tape, by the way. It's on BASF magnetic tape. Like Google's final backup is a tape warehouse with like mechanical arms that load the tape because you can do more data per square inch on magnetic tape still right now than anything else. And it's also very chemically robust through changes in weather and things like that, and magnetic storm and things like that. So I mean, I still don't know about what digital original is. I think if we like, there's a team in Oxford. They're trying to etch into glass panels in a thing called voxels, so they can do like very thick glass panel etch into the center of the panel. The glass can be burnt, go through fire, go boiling water. Like it's the glass is very chemically stable, and so that could be one way of putting a 2 million year data into an object that we know can last a long, long time. And then I would say I believe that is the original, and I'd be into that as a thing. But right now, I still don't know exactly how to describe what the original really is yet.
Is this something that you take into account during your creative process?
I mean, you want to produce a lot. I produce a lot in private in the studio, but I don't release a lot. I think it's more, it's better to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jonas, your take on this, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I think value in these ways are convention, right? It's convention and consensus and agreement. So then there is like, it's a weird distributed network that makes the value happen in this like completely strange market. In terms of like digital versus like what's the original or not, I mean, like if you look at like NewYorkTimes.com, like I think 40% of all their outgoing links are already dead. And that's only like in 20 years, right? Like, or 25 years. So like what you call it like digital rot, it's like a tremendous kind of important aspect of the whole internet. At the same time, like you look at social media, all the different social media platform networks, nothing of this is really archived fully, like because Instagram is a walled garden, TikTok is something else, like so it's all in the ephemera, right? It's all in the ephemera. It's ephemeral. So then, like, how do you claim that? So then, what my claim is that it's like the digital file, whether it's an original or not, is irrelevant. It's like the rarity is based on a convention of a mutual agreement that we all say this is valuable because now I'm on paper or on the blockchain or in the established agreement, the owner. And then whether the original file goes away or not, does that really matter? right? Like, does it matter? It's like the agreement, and that agreement will live for as long as the agreement exists, right? If you want to preserve things for the future, for sure, physical is much more reliable than anything else. Like, print it on paper. It will last for like hundreds of years if you have good ink and good paper. Digital lives very short term. Like, there was this case this week from the App Store, like Apple's iPhone, iPad App Store, where they're asking like game developers who've been making like games as artworks, any app that hasn't been updated in 2 years will be removed, right? So you have to go through your back catalog of like 30, 40 art games and then just update it, which is tremendously laborious because dependencies change and you have to update all your code. Nobody has time for that. But for Apple, anything that hasn't been updated in 2 years is irrelevant. Like, it's not worth anything. They're just going to remove it and then it's gone forever. So like, and that's a 2-year period, which one could claim is very short when it comes to like a digital space. So in the case of like the longevity of NFTs, it's very hard to predict where that's going, right? And I think there are we'll see so many cases of things going technically wrong with NFTs. We've seen so many cases of that before. But the agreement, the consensus and convention doesn't have to go away at all. Like, let's say like a piece from Rai gets like destroyed from super rare and super rare collapses, Rai can still just mint that again, you know? And then you say, okay, so because I know the collector, and Rai be like, okay, but here's the same NFT again. You know, and if that's an update to the convention, that's not a problem. So I think all of this will be solved. But for anyone who claims that it's like a permanent, sort of entry into a distributed network, no, like there's no way. There's long-term longevity that you can predict long-term longevity of an NFT space, for sure not.
Thank you. We have another question, I think.
No, my name is Sabrine, and I'm a lawyer too, and getting into the subject. I was just wondering, because we were just talking about the impermanence and whether you should, whether it's the convention or actually the art piece or where it's stored. And I'm just wondering about insurance, because as a collector, you always, you care about the insurance of your art piece. So how do you do that with NFT? Is there actually insurer who actually protect the artwork, the NFT, and do you address this in the smart contracts? And also, who is liable? I mean, in case the server goes down. I mean, as an art collector, it's my ownership, so I would take insurance for my artwork. But how do I do that with an NFT?
Yeah, I think that's the big problem with a decentralized network, that currently there is no legislation for cryptocurrency. There is an upcoming legislation, and it's probably going into force in 2024, but NFTs are not regulated under that regulation. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing now, I think that's the biggest risk of the whole NFT market when something goes wrong, because also the identity of the sellers on the market. I mean, you can easily sell NFTs anonymously or commit fraud with your identity, because, well, yeah, I mean, that's inherent on the blockchain. So, yeah, the insurance part, that's a problem.
I have a friend in London. Her name's Caroline Taylor, and she started a company called Appraisal Bureau. She's like a traditional art appraiser from the traditional art market, but now she has this Appraisal Bureau project, and it's underwritten by Lloyd's, as far as I know, and they do the insurance for NFTs, or they're trying to at least. And they're underwritten by, you know, a serious financial institution. So they're finding ways to do that. So as far as I know, she's actually right now insuring people who own CryptoPunks against loss. Yeah, with this Appraisal Bureau thing that she's built.
It's a good question, because what are you insuring? Are you insuring the digital image? Are you afraid of like using your hard drive and losing the copy of the digital that you had on your hard drive? Or if I go back to description of what is the artistic value and what is the financial value. Are you protecting or insuring the NFT, which is your wallet in kind of most of the time the access to your wallet, to be able to show that you are the owner of the digital file, but the value. If you try, when we're talking insurance, we're talking financial value. So most of the time, I would say that the most important thing is to protect the NFT, which is so protect your wallet and protect the fact that the blockchain will stay on, the smart contract is still there, and yeah, it's a rabbit hole. Yeah, quite fast. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other question, or maybe?
Regarding the insurance, I was wondering if you do like a piece in real, then you will need to have insurance for that. You know, it's not only NFT authenticity. It's I was okay with like insurance, the NFT file, which is okay. Servers, we don't know because we don't have enough view on the past with internet and servers, and they are private and so on. But regarding the insurance of the real piece, when you create it.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
The physical piece.
With crypto NFTs, there's not a physical piece. It's unusual for there to be something physical. Traditionally, it's just the file. So there's never really a physical thing. Most crypto artists don't actually make physical things at all. It's only the ones who are trying to graduate to the more traditional gallery world that are doing that. They're going like Beeple now makes big prints of the work, but traditionally he was only making files.
Yeah, but now the movement, I think, in art, it's installation and all that. So a lot of people are doing digital file, but also, you know, the immersive experience with painting and all those stuff. So at the end of the day, we're gonna have a mix between NFTs for a single piece. We're gonna have, for example, a painting and then the musical around it. You know, like when you go in the Biennale of Venice now, each time it's a place and the piece is something mixed media. Then in this case, the NFT and, you know, the insurance, it's weird, no? I don't know, just a question.
It's very difficult, yeah. You are almost describing a performance, and that was for a long time in art. It's very difficult. Maybe the NFT is one of the answers. How to monetize a performance? How to live as an artist when I'm a performance artist, when I'm doing stuff like this.
More and more classical artists are doing. I think I don't know the last in Beaux-Arts. I don't know, it's a very known artist who is doing a lot of paintings, but he did a lot of also NFTs, you know. So it was before it's graphist and it was like, you know, Picto and all those stuff. But now there's a lot of classical artists who are adding NFTs, you know, like, I don't know, transformation on their own, you know, environment. So how do you deal with that?
It's a creation process. I guess they are just interested in new media. So,
I mean, it's hopefully they do it well. Is all I can say.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to wrap it up now. So thank you very much for my co-panelists. I hope we brought light on some questions, and we are here if you have some questions more physically. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.